I'm a generation of folks who our parents or family never thought they would retire in America. They were all going home. You try to find humanity in people and everyone, and we're struggling to see and understand why people will do this to their own people. People who are experiencing the same issues that they are. And a lot of the rhetoric that was coming from the diaspora was really around they're inundated with bad news from Haiti and they don't want it. Like, they can't sit with it. There's a side conversation we'll talk about another time around our ability to sit with pain and hurt and grief. We're a generation that struggle to sit with it. And they're like, are there any love stories coming out of Haiti? Can we get some Real Housewives, something? All we see is death, and they don't want it. We believe that things have to turn around. We don't know how, but we believe. Everywhere we turn, we're not wanted. And so Haiti has to get better, right? It is imperative, right, for us to be home. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in a community called Melrose Park and Fort Lauderdale proper. I'm one of 4 girls. I am third, and so I am a middle child, and everything that comes with it. I grew up with Haitian parents from Port-au-Père and Ansanm, who were on both sides some of the first to come to the States. And so even earlier on in my upbringing, I was very hyper aware of migration. I was a very curious child, had lots of questions about why are people being held at Chrome and Guantanamo? What do you mean you're trying to get them out? Why are they here? How long are they here for? But also grew up in an era where in grade school it was very challenging being Haitian with the images on TV. But counter to that, or alongside that, I went to a Haitian church. So I grew up in a Haitian church where a lot of my friends went to the schools that I went to. My parents had really great friends. And so I think more than just a religious or a spiritual practice, it was really a community for folks who all migrated, from many of them knowing each other since Haiti. I laugh and say that my mom was a teacher in Haiti, and a lot of her students were at my church, and they had kids. And some of the students of the parents of her students were at my church as well. So these are folks who've known my family for a long time. So I grew up in the church, and that means that a lot of my formation or my training came from church. And I always say that I'm very proud of the way that I can kind of trace back, like having to stand before the church, reciting verses, giving a 5-minute special, being in the choir, really prepared me for leadership roles, being in the youth department at church, then being the youth director at church, really organizing young people for activities, training them up. All of that was really, even at a very young age, really gave me the skill sets that I need to be able to be the Santra that I am today. Earlier on, I thought I would be a clinician. I thought I would go be a doctor. And I had an opportunity to go to a medical magnet program and shadowed a respiratory therapist, and realized that if you throw up, I'm going to throw up. Blood is not really my thing. And so, but I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, or I thought so. Specifically, public health is actually what I went to college for. That's what my background is in, public health policy and management. I wanted to be a doctor. Clinical wasn't for me. But because I'm Haitian, stability always mattered to me. And so it was like, I have to be in the health field because there's always jobs. And I so just followed that track. But really what I was interested in public health is the impact of racism, systemic oppression, and what it does to people's health. And so we see incidences of high blood pressure in children who live in communities that have had drive-by shootings. And so that is really kind of like when I got to college, I would say I really got politicized even more. Past migration, went to college, really started to learn about political issues. Hurricane Katrina happened when I was in college. We had a first black quarterback in an overwhelmingly white school. So there was a lot of racial tensions in Gainesville where I went to school. Right after I graduated, a little bit after I graduated, Trayvon Martin happened. And so all of this really helped to politicize me into the person I will be. And so you match the current events with some of the trainings that I received was like really the perfect storm for me to be who I am. What makes someone Haitian American is I think that one, you are Haitian, but you're having the American experience. And so I am very hyper aware that I am American. I'm American. I'm Black American in this country, but also in my household and in my experience, there was a lot of Haitian culture in it. I laugh and say that Haitian Americans, especially our generation, 80s babies, 90s, we're Haitian American because we speak English, have some Haitian influence, but we did not grow up in Haiti, so it's very different. We have always had to understand immigration and migration in ways that I have friends of mine who grew up here who would say, what do you mean people can't just come? And so there's like a awareness of international issues that Haitian Americans, immigrants who are hyphenated have that many folks don't have. And the other thing I'll say is there's a relationship to Blackness that often we struggle with because our parents often don't understand Blackness in the way that African Americans understand Blackness. And so we're often, critical. I would say we're not as attuned to the African American Black experience in a way that we should be. Haitian American and African American allyship is complicated. I will say that because of the incidences that just happened in Ohio, we again are reminded that before there's enough Haitians to really be in solidarity with other Haitians, there are other groups who come to our defense. And so we saw the NAACP in Ohio really come to the defense of folks who were experiencing real racism. The Ku Klux Klan came out. And so the same is true for Miami. Those who are opposition, people who don't like Black people, who don't like immigrant folks, do a really good job in media to really paint the picture that immigrants are the reason why people are experiencing so much hardship. And the people that are often targeted are African Americans, right? They're the ones who are experiencing all the impact from being enslaved, from Jim Crow. And so those are the folks who are still trying to get their 40 acres and a mule. And then if the rhetoric is, it is because of immigrants that you can't find housing, it is because of immigrants that you don't have jobs, then it makes the relationship very complicated. I would also say that in America, my humble opinion, not so humble, is that we're not as, we don't know history as much. I think that even with the internet, we're not responsible with the internet. We don't realize how much information we have access to. And so there continues to be not enough awareness about how our communities have been linked and how to hold on to those linkages over the decades and in the future. And so it's like a retelling, a relearning of history from generation to generation to remind us of who we've been to each other, what we've tried to be to one another, and also what's gotten in the way of that. I am the executive director of the Miami Workers Center. And the Miami Workers Center is a power building organization. We build with working class people to help them to understand systemic oppression and to fight for better rights, resources, and respect that they deserve. We really typically say with our members that we believe that people deserve to live and work in dignity, where their wages are not being stolen, where the conditions in their house are not making them sick. And so we know there's a culture of exploitation in Miami that is not often talked about. Miami is seen as a tourist destination where people come and have fun, they party. But around that, alongside that, is a culture of abuse. and of exploitation of workers and tenants. And we want to come out the shadows and really take that on. And that's the work that we do at the Miami Worker Center. We've been able to do that since 1999. We've had big wins, national wins, really changed the landscape of some of the housing fights. But we're also in a difficult state right now. And so that's one of my work. I founded Ansanm in 2017. And it is not ironic that there was a lot of momentum following an election, which people really felt, as a woman, as a Black person, like what will my contribution be? What will our contribution as a community be to move this nation in a different direction? And so Ansanm really exists because when I came back from Gainesville from college, I kept meeting phenomenal Haitian people, and we kept saying to each other, why don't we know each other? Where's the space for us? Will there be space for us? We created that, a space where people can talk culture, talk about what it means to live within the hyphen, talk about finances, not just from an individual perspective, but from a community perspective. What does it mean for us to buy blocks together, to invest in businesses together? What does it mean for us to lend to each other first if banks won't lend to us? Ultimately, what does it look like for us to build political power, to have candidates, to have elected officials that actually represent the interests of the community? And so that's the project that Ansanm is. It's a wonderful experience, but the work continues. And I'm also an adjunct professor at Lynn University. I teach amazing collegiates, many of them international students from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Jamaica, about what it means to be a social entrepreneur, to build their teams, to come up with metrics, to evaluate their teams. And so I would say I feel very purposeful. It is work that brings me a lot of joy, a lot of pain. It is a contribution to the future. And one of the things that people say that I take very seriously is I desire to be a good ancestor. And so that the generations will say that, Santra paved the way, and they will be proud of us and not disappointed. The housing crisis in Miami is not to be taken lightly. And so we have the Secretary of HUD, which we say the biggest boss in housing, came to Miami. This is the former Secretary, Marcia Fudge. She came to Miami and she said, we lead the nation. We're the epicenter of the housing crisis in the nation. Specifically because the wages are suppressed here because of the industries that we have here. We have a tourist industry, we have an agriculture industry that really are not salaried jobs, right? And so people actually don't make a significant amount in order to pay outrageous rental costs. I would say people like, oh no, this is cheaper than Boston or New York. However, the wages don't match the wages in those states and in those economies. We like to also differentiate is that while there is a housing crisis, there is not a lack of housing. And so the biggest issue is that there's been, everywhere we look around in Miami, there's cranes, there's development, there's new buildings, right? So we have a surplus of luxury housing and not enough affordable and workforce housing. And so you have developers who are building for what does not exist, right? They are building luxury housing for people who can pay $7,000 a month, $8,000 a month. If you have that kind of money, you can find housing here. There's plenty. But if you need affordable housing, if you are working class here in Miami, and we say further than working class, even if you have a salaried job, if you have a child, you need to have upwards of $120,000 in order to live here comfortably, right? And so that's really what's driving the housing costs, is that there's too much development for luxury and not enough development for affordable. Secondly, these crises they don't just happen, right? So in Tallahassee, our state capital, there's a Sadowski Fund, which is the housing fund in order to pay for new development of affordable housing. For the last decade or even more, the governor has raided that fund to use for different projects. And so that fund was misused or not really allocated for what it was there for. And so this is why when people ask, why don't we have housing? we stand with confidence and say it is not the new immigrants that are coming here that are taking the housing. It is a misappropriation of dollars. It is also developers who are building not on our behalf, but for the interests of themselves. I will say specifically for the Haitian community, one, we like to be close to Haiti, right? Miami is right here. We also experience we like to say we experience a little bit of Haiti here. We have mango trees. We have the weather. If you go to any Haitian who owns a home, their backyard is like they have a jardin in Haiti. And so there's a way in which people feel still close to home, even if they're not home when they're here. So I think Miami is really important for the Haitian diaspora. And I think it's something that we should consider in terms of collective effort. And what does it mean to preserve Miami? What does it mean to preserve South Florida specifically as a hub, as a mecca for the Haitian diaspora in the country? So we have elected officials, I will say, elected officials who are the broker that broker deals with development. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to ask questions of our elected officials around the deals that they're brokering to ensure that affordable housing is actually a priority for them and not on the back end. I laugh and say that when you look at the contracts of these deals, and when I say deals, I'm saying all the apartment buildings that you're coming up, those are deals because these folks want tax credits. They want to be able to build in the city. And so the elected officials have to say yes. And what we often see is they have 10%, maybe 15% set aside for affordable housing. And sometimes that's one unit or maybe two, when you actually need more affordable housing than luxury. And so we're asking the elected officials, Haitian Americans right now can ask elected officials to be bold, to be fearless in their demands of people who want to do business with them. Because this is what we have, this is why we elect them. This is why we have some super majority of Haitians in certain areas so that they can really ensure that the interests of their people are met. And so that's something that we do. The harms is that we are not concentrated, in which we lose power. And so concentrations of people who live together, they have much more political power, they have much more economic power. But as you separate, you dilute that power. And that is the harm. So you can't vote together, you can't really put your money together, and you lose kind of like the way that you can move in blocks. And if you know organizing really counts on the amount of people power that you have that is concentrated in an area. And so this is not something to take lightly, but it's not something that is too late. We could always turn this thing around if we want to get in front of it. And there are things that are being talked about in this state to see how we can get in front of it as well. So in terms of Little Haiti, I would say the thing that grinds my gears is the sentiment of museum. If anything gets under my skin, it's kind of like we're going there. And so I think that if you visit Little Haiti still now today, while the main streets may not reflect the Little Haiti we knew, in terms of the stores that were there, I tell folks I grew up coming to Miami, Vigil Tuxedo was there, there was Sissy Bon there was like Haitian businesses booming, right? There were markets and the business, the front street, obviously Northeast 2nd Avenue was really booming in terms of Haitian businesses. You can really see that they've turned around. But I will say the opportunity is that we still have the Little Haiti Cultural Center. And I think that is an organizing point for us to hold on to the Little Haiti Cultural Center. But if you go into the neighborhoods, all into those neighborhoods, there are duplexes, and all you hear is Haitian Creole being spoken. And so there's still, I wouldn't say the numbers are as large as they used to be, but there's still a good amount of Haitians who live in Little Haiti. And so I would not count Little Haiti out in terms of still the opportunity to organize, to make sure we hold on to the piece that we have. What does that look like? You still have huge Haitian pillars in that community. You have Pima Book Restaurant is there. You have Notre Dame Church is there. You have that Baptist church that is there. All of those are in Little Haiti. What does it look like for them to build more if they can, if they have more funding? What does it look like for us to build affordable housing with some of these churches? Really concentrate, make sure that concentration of Haitians, the Haitian people who live in Little Haiti can remain there, and to protect the Little Haiti Culture Center. right? Because there are places that you go that these are historic sites, right? And we can make sure they're historic sites so that they're preserved, so that they remain. I would say opportunities to pick up, and I think that's something for folks. There's a new generation of money. There's a lot of folks who don't think there's money in our community. I know a lot of my friends who have money. What would it look like for us if we cannot purchase by ourselves? This is what we're talking about in terms of collectivizing. What does it look like for us to collectively own plazas in Little Haiti? What does it mean for us to collectively own business storefronts where we might be someone else's business, a little mommy or poppy who can't afford to own it, but we are the owners and they're renting to us. So there are ways in which we can get creative. I haven't seen that yet, but I do think there's still an opportunity. Prices are high in Little Haiti, right? It is expensive now in the city of Miami to buy. However, that doesn't mean that any of us should be counting ourselves out and really trying to, get into ownership. For the people that do own, the churches especially, because there's a lot of ideas around how churches can get in the development game. Meaning they have a lot of land, they have a lot of property. A lot of that land and property goes vacant except for Sundays. How can they really use the space, like really activate the space, to be of use to community? Can it be a co-working space during the week and just church on Sunday? Like, how do we activate these spaces to ensure that our community can still feel alive in these places? I think there's opportunities for us to really kind of like float with some of these business owners and these churches, for us to really get in the game. There are opportunities. None of these ideas are new. We just got to come to the table and do it. I'm very passionate about organizing the Haitian community. And I think it's challenging because we are not clear on our politics. And so I think everything outside of immigration, if you get into the weeds, you ask questions, you start to realize that we actually don't have clear politics. We're actually not in study around what are our values as it becomes to politics, like what is really important. And so what I found that we have is that we have a lot of leaders or people who position themselves as leaders, but not real clarity in terms of what's the ultimate goal here. What's your agenda? How did you come up with the agenda? Who did you get the agenda from? And if you don't have that at your core, who are you accountable to? And so when you think about Florida, I would say that Florida, and I'm particular about South Florida because I think that South Florida is a community that should not exist in the way it is. South Florida's Haitian community. You're talking about a community that was built by boat people, right? People who came by boat. And now all of a sudden you have a lot of them who have become elected officials. I would also say that when you look at Black elected officials in South Florida, a majority of them are Haitian, right? And so, and people see that in us. I think the point that we need to make is also what is strategic. I think there's work for us to be done around do we have clear politics? And when I say do we have clear politics, it's like, who are we working for? What are our goals? What's a North Star for us? And if me as a community leader cannot share an agenda from our elected officials or for coalitions that exist, absolutely that would mean that there's going to be breakoffs, there's going to be discord because we don't have a shared agenda that's built from the people who are experiencing life to move us forward. I think a lot of folks think representation is enough. I'm not from that school of thought. I actually don't think representation enough. I think representation is enough for our parents' generation who first came here. Let's get in the door. I think a new generation is asking for, what are the fruits? What have you done for us? Right? What can you do? Do you actually understand what it means to be an elected official? Organizing is not easy. And I think we take it for granted that because we're Haitian, it is easy to organize us. We all have different self-interests. We all have different reasons why we engage in the way that we do. And the assumption is that we're all in it for the same reason. And unless we do the work to unpack self-interest, to understand why each and every one of us who are leaders on our own merit are showing up, you're going to have an unorganized population, right? And in other communities, I would say they're clear. They're campaign strategy charts. There's so much work that has to go into it that we vastly underestimate. The last thing I'll say on this point is I think that I'm reminded that there's still a generation that came from survival mode. That was their entry point to the States, and they've never gotten off survival mode. And survival modes doesn't allow for you to be bold and to think future. It's about today, today, today. What can I get today? While it helps to meet a specific need for a short term, it is not enough for the long game. And I think that it is high time for the South Florida, for Haitian community, to ask ourselves, to understand we're here in this country. What is the long-term game? I do actually have another example. I have a Haitian organizer on my team, and she will laugh if she sees this. And we're trying to organize with Haitian renters who are experiencing all kinds of extreme rent hikes every month, conditions issues, the landlords not taking care of the properties. And she told me she's going to go meet them at a food bank. They start to line up to get food at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said to her, you ask them one question for me. You ask them if this is what they left Haiti to come and do in one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Or do they want to ensure that they can be able to have the resources that they need to buy their own food, to feed their kids what they want to feed them, and not be in the rain, in the heat, waiting for somebody to give them some food at a food bank. These are choices that we have to make when we're holding the short-term survival and long-term what we want. I'm actually not interested in a book bag drive. I want people to be able to buy their kids the book bags that they want. I'm actually not interested in a food bank because I don't want what they have there. I want to buy my own food, and I want my people to be able to buy what they want to buy. And so that is the difference between what kind of folks do you have? Do you have people who just want to put a Band-Aid on, or do you want people who want to see a thriving community? I want to see a thriving community. I have to remind myself, and I often say this to a lot of new arrivals. When you come to America, I know there's a lot of pressure to hit the ground running. Take a moment, learn about the place you're in. Because if you don't, you would think people want to help you. They don't. No one is going to, some people have good hearts. Majority, self-interest. If I have power and I can give you $5 instead of having to give you 25, I'm gonna give you $5, right? And so to me, it's that absolutely the wealth, the affluent have, and I would say the governing bodies have to do right by our people. They won't do it because it's just right. They do it because we pressure them to do it. And so instead of being at the food bank, what does it look like for you to go to your city hall meetings and say, this is your experience in this city? Right? We've had incidents where we had to say, hey, we're holding you all accountable because you all are doing business with landlords that exploit our folks. But that doesn't happen unless people say this, they're not going to take it, right? And so for me, there's absolutely a position or a responsibility of the working class. And that also means that there are people who we vote for that are not for us. And so paying attention to that allows us to make different decisions. I would say two things. Yes. I do think that there is a way in which my generation, I'm a millennial. I would also say Zers, who are right behind us. There's a way in which we could be apathetic to what it means to be in political struggle, to play a role in these fights. I give the example that you have two generations now, and maybe even the Xers, who have been sold a promise, and are very clear that it was all lies. And so a lot of them is like, why would I engage in a system that now I have hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans? I actually will never be able to buy a house. The climate is hot and there's storms, and this is not what I signed up for. So on some level, I think it's like I don't want nothing to do with y'all, right? And so there's a disengagement, and then there's also, the internet, right? People, they're distracted, right? We on TikTok, we on Facebook and Instagram, we busy, right? We don't even realize that we're unclear on what's happening, what's coming. The second thing I would say is, as someone who organizes with community, I find Haitian folks to be some of my most challenging folks to organize with. Because it comes from, like, museum. I'm gonna do like, it's like, this is what it is. Even in a country where I fundamentally believe, as a child of an immigrant, America owes me everything. I want it all. And for some folks, this is better than what they've had, even if it's not great. And it's hard to navigate that. There's also people who come from a culture where they've seen a lot of corruption. And so if you're a part of an organization, immediately they think you're corrupt as well. And so there's a lot to unlearn, especially with the waves of different people when they come. But it's challenging to have people believe in organizations, to believe in organizing, to believe that they should be a part of politics when everything that they've seen is against that. I had to do a lot of work to understand it because, again, I didn't grow up in Haiti. I also think that there's different patterns in the generations and when they come. And so the different ways of migration comes with different things. And so when you have corruption where every organization or a lot of organizations are paying people underneath the table, or it's a front and everybody's just paying themselves, when they see me, an executive director of an organization, I'm a front. I'm paying myself. I have stuff that's happening on the side. And so it's been like really interesting learning, really kind of like trying to help people unlearn what they believe about organizations, what they believe is possible through organizations. Even, for example, we have workers who their wages get stolen, meaning they come to America, they're not clear on, you actually need to get paid. Like, if you let 4 weeks happen, that's a lot. Like, that is not the norm. By second or third week, you should be getting paid, unless they said it once a month. And they won't ask for their money. Where I'll have Spanish folks, yeah. Because in Miami, if they steal your wages, they owe you 3 times what they stole. For me to get Haitians to ask for what people stole from them is a mission. And I don't want to generalize in that way, but I think that understanding what the barriers are to organizing, because bon Dieu connaît, résime, sam ka fè boss la, c'est travail li, met kay la c'est kay li. The church having a role to play in apathy is one of the biggest contradictions that I live. But I also say, to your earlier question, not only is it a community of folks who have known me, know my families, also feel a responsibility to challenge. I have done I've partnered with the Haitian Lawyers Association to bring information to my folks in ways that I know if I did not come back as a millennial, come back to a church that often you're questioning yourself, is it serving me? I don't know. But I do feel it's a duty that if I'm more clear, I should share that light. And so some things they're open to and some things they're not. But for the things that they're open to, I'm sharing light. I also challenge around, faith without works is dead. And so I think there's a way that with Christian people, I can push. Because I can also use the scripture to pull them in ways that, like, I don't think I'm here to be under people's feet, right? I'm not here to just be trampled over, right? There's a way that I engage them. However, I do think that people who've experienced a lot of harm, a lot of trauma, there's a way that, oh, I'm alive, thank you. Versus like, don't you think you deserve more? And the thing that I often find is useful for me when I am able to bring them to the table is their children. And so I often say, do you have children? Do you want them to be able to, do you think it's okay if somebody stole from your kids? What if they stole your children's wages? And then all of a sudden, like, oh no, that wouldn't be okay. Because they're going to defend their children. And so, like, what about them? And a lot of the work is like, can you have people dare to believe again? To dare to be courageous, even if they've been mistreated, if they've been violated, if it hasn't worked again. And it's like self-esteem work to have them believe in themselves enough to stand up for their rights, right? Okone, you know, una be wool, you know, say bossouye. And it's like, you know, people don't even believe. That's why I don't even introduce myself as the executive director when I meet them. I'm Santra, I'm with the Miami Workers Center. Because the minute, oh, boss, like, no, you know as much as I know. Like, let's have a conversation where you and I could be at the same level. All of those are strategies to be like, you know, like we have something that we can contribute. What can you contribute to this movement? How can I have you believe again? Do you still dream? When you were a child, what did you want to be? These are questions that we ask to kind of tap into, like, what do you want this future to be for yourself? I think this brings me back to the question that you asked about what does it mean to be Haitian-American? I'm also growing up in America where a core of the civil rights movement came from the churches. And so I'm influenced by what I saw the churches in this country be able to do and to be able to move. Majority of your civil rights leaders were pastors really organizing their churches to do the Montgomery bus boycott. And so that is a mixing of what I've seen or what I've read. I wouldn't say seen personally, what I've read in American history, and how do I confront the lack of concern for fellow brothers and sisters in the church. I say to my pastor all the time, what do y'all have to say about Haiti? Who have you talked to? I mean, because we're a part of a big denomination, lots of money. As a matter of fact, the denomination that I'm a part of is so structured that we have different chapters. And in Florida, if not for Haitians, the church would be dying. Like, it is immigrant people that are keeping the church basically alive and bringing new life, new membership. And so I say to them, you know, what does a conference have to say about what's happening in Haiti? Are you asking them questions? And I know I've asked questions, you know, when I'm able to show up, you know, I'm part-time. When I'm able to show up, you know, I ask hard questions around, are you talking to elected officials as someone who have congregants that are experiencing the brunt of bad immigration laws or the housing crisis? Because the first place these folks are turning to is a church. And so from that perspective, they like to say, oh, you can't mix. Yes, you can. You can't do endorsements, but you can advocate on behalf of your people, because history have said in this country that churches have done that. I think there's a sentiment around, like, you know, you know, but how long are we going to be here? We're going to be here for a while, right? I've been here for a while. And so that's the question. I'm like, as we live here, should we not be concerned about what's happening here? When I'm the most upset and I take a break, is because of the silence, the inaction, the life goes on from churches that I'm just unsatisfied with. I will say in North Miami, which was, you know, not shocking, when a pastor decided to take on the streets, you know, people have questions around whether or not it was strategic, whatever. Thousands took the street in numbers that we haven't seen. And so we understand that clergy, faith-based people have power. What would it look like for us to organize them in a real way, put pressure on them? In the same way that, because they're leaders, thousands took the streets. I cannot tell you an elected official who can call a meeting in our community and that many people come out. Yafashi is true. And so we know that if faith is involved, Godi Mashwi. And for the Miami Workers Center, we don't have meetings on Sunday in the morning because they don't negotiate. And so when the clergy says we're taking the streets, they take the streets, right? And they take the streets not in small numbers, in numbers we have not. I mean, all of 125th Street, multiple across the nation, right? And so the question is, what else could we be asking of the bishop, right? Who's talking to him, right? What is his politics? What other concerns are coming from his base or his church? We say base, his church, that are social issues that we should be asking our elected officials to deal with. And there's a connection that we can make if we feel as if we can still organize. I will say our generation struggles because a lot of us are like disappointed in the church, we give up. Every time I go to church, it's a reminder that people go to church. Thousands of people go to church consistently. I went to a concert one Saturday night. I was shocked. It wasn't even a Haitian church. It was an American church. Thousands of black people were there Saturday night. You know, you would think people in a club. People go to church. And there's a lot of people, and so there's a way for that. We need to engage them and to kind of like activate them to be concerned about social ills. I get disappointed. I have to remind myself that this is my community. I love them. While it's challenging, at my core, I'm a lover of all people. I don't discriminate. And so if there's speakers that come to the church that talk bad about gay people, trans people, it's infuriating because I don't want to be associated with people who don't love people. Also know that because I was a youth leader, I know there are young people in my church who are also gay and lesbian, who want to feel loved. And their parents are hearing messages that is counter to their livelihood. So I don't take that kindly. And I ask my pastor hard questions about that. Like, we have to be able to make, from my perspective, we have to be able to be honest and real about the Bible, about our beliefs, and be ever learning, ever growing. And I don't know that people have that ability. It's easy to be like, no, it's actually really hard to be where I'm at, to live in the contradictions of what people see their beliefs to be, hard stances, and for me to be like, actually, I don't agree, right? I do see space. Abortion is another. I don't know of churches who are taking on all these kids that are in foster care. And so who are we to dictate women's bodies? And so when these kinds of messages are sent, or don't vote because these people vote for, they believe in gay folks, or they want abortions, I gotta take a break. Let me pause, recenter, remind myself that I bring light. I mentor so many young people. Some of my kids who are in my youth group are college graduates now. And many of them didn't go the route, didn't do that journey by themselves, because we came back and told them, here's what you need to do. And so, I have to take a break, take a fresh air, and this is why they present me when I come as a visitor. They welcome me. They make me stand like a visitor and say hello. And because sometimes I have to take a pause. I won't ever get our inability to sit with people who look like us, speak like us, eat the same food that we do, but may have different practices for us to hate them. And I think that's another reason why I often have to take a break. I don't know a Haitian that doesn't have someone in their family that practices voodoo. And I think if you're a true Christian, you're able to hold multiple truths. You may not be a practitioner, may not be what floats your boat, but there's a lot about Haitian culture that is mysterious, that is anti-Western medicine, although I believe I'm public health, so we'll talk about vaccines another day. But there are things that we do, ways in which we conduct ourselves, that is very ancestral. And if we can accept that, we can accept different people, different beliefs. And I don't get it, but I will also say, quite frankly, I wasn't always here. I did work to get here. I'm also shaped in a white supremacist, patriarchal world. in which I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist church, right? I would say very conservative. And so it is through relationship, through connection with different people, through reading of my own, through experiencing people that you get to, you have to question your beliefs. When I came back from college, I worked for an organization that worked with people who are HIV/AIDS. And majority of the staff people there, I wouldn't even say a majority, super majority. I think there were 3 of us who are not a part of the LGBTQ community. And so jokes that would be made prior to that about LGBTQ folks, I don't think I joked about them, but I probably didn't even get disturbed. I wasn't conscious of it. But when they become your people who let you take a nap because you're in grad school and working 40 hours, and I was sick, I thought I had the swine flu, make sure I got home. Like, these are your people. It makes you relate to folks differently. And I think a lot of the issues with church folks is that if all you're around all the time is church folks, are you around real people for real? You don't know real people. You're not experiencing real people. And so you don't have the opportunity to evolve and to allow your heart space to enlarge, to get, to let people in, right? I think that, Haitians specifically, I'm so fascinated because when I think about my mom, I'm like, my mom was a creature of habit. We're creatures of habit. They go to church, they come home. They don't have that many hobbies here, right? And so where are they meeting different people to challenge their beliefs? They're not. And so it's easy to get stuck in that this is what I believe. But how do you know that? How do you know you believe that? How have you tested that? Who have you talked to? Who have you encountered? Have they been mean to you? Have they wanted harm for you? Why would you want harm for them? This is like, again, why, as much as they love me, they know I have different politics, I have different beliefs, and I hope they'll get here. I tend to focus on young people who I feel like have the bandwidth or are more welcoming to the bandwidth to move the needle. I'm talking politics in church. This could have never happened if not for the relationship I have with people at my church. Like, I literally brought a table, Avanse Ansanm, and had election information in the 7-day Adventist Haitian church. This could not have happened. Had my pastor walk by, he looked at me, he kind of smirked. He's like, in this America, we're not going to talk about politics, what our people are about to go through. I said, Pastor, I think we need to talk politics. But, they don't want to talk about abortion. But how many people in your congregation have abortions? They do. You cannot talk about it. It's happening. I think you want to let them know that it's okay for them too, right? And that's the word. And the last thing I'll say about church in terms of like contradictions, like, I'm a woman in a Haitian church. That can be very sexist, right? So as much skill I have, the eldership board, which is, I would say, the leaders of the church, and my whole time have never had a woman. And so one of my good friends who's at my church, she's a PhD, like Dr. Mikael. She's a psychologist. Me and her talk about it all the time. Some of us, we're a little too much. We'll say we can run circles around some of these folks, with all due respect. And what some of the leaders will say, oh, they're not ready. When will they be ready? What do they need to be ready for? All of it is, it's painful. It's painful. It's also, I'm a oversharer, so my sisters get mad, but my parents are deceased. These are people who knew my parents. They tell me stories about my parents. Like, these are my people. And so I feel a connection to them that goes beyond religious beliefs. And I think for a lot of people, church sometimes, if not more times than another, is more about the feeling of community than other. I've tried to go to other churches, but I got to praise and worship in Creole. Right? It's different. And people got to know me, and they got to ask for my sisters, and tell me how I look like my father. All of that, like, that's a sense of belongingness, even when we don't always see eye to eye on religious principles. I know some of them are Trumpers. I'm ready for the conversation. Waiting. I do worship in Creole. I was just in France, and I was telling people I don't speak French, but I speak biblical French. So I have more language in church in French. There was a verse that I had to say when had to be 7. Dieu veut se seconder. Et je suis croissé en sagesse, en sati. I forget the rest, but I know verses in French. I know some 23 a little bit. I've lost a lot of it, but I know French hymnals. Yeah. The class issue in the diaspora actually became more vocal about it after I had an experience in Haiti. And someone said to me, a young person, if your family didn't travel by boat, you wouldn't even be able to talk to us. And, I sat with it. Oh, yeah. It's okay. Because experiences like that help to clarify a lot for you. And so I'm never a person who is saddened. To me, those experiences have like really sharpened my political views. And so I am very clear that I am a child of the working class. And I would also say that I've also challenged people's interpretation of boat people because I go to my church and I talk to older folks in my family. I learned my father's story, which is a funny story to me, of how he migrated. I'm going to come back to class. My father had a friend whose father owned a boat who would do import-export. And my father says to his father, my grandfather, Tale Mabvini. And that's the story. He went on a trip with his friends whose father owned a boat, and he never came back until he sent for some of his family. That was his boat story. Not, I gotta run. And so there's a lot that comes with people's interpretation of people who live specifically in Miami, in South Florida, because there is a South Florida rest of Haitian diaspora, Northern Haitian diaspora, kind of like how they view us, who we are to them, how we were able to arrive, what that says about who we are. And so I'm very clear that I'm a child of the working class. My mom would always remind us that my grandma was a Mashan. And she was like, remember that, right? And so my grandma, who was a Mashan, has a pharmacist granddaughter, has a nurse granddaughter, has an executive director granddaughter, has a lawyer granddaughter. And we are now able to position ourselves to be in tables, to sit across from people who will never see our worth, right? Who they are shocked, and quite frankly, feel some kind of way that they have to share space and power with us. And that experience is really what led me to move how I move with Avanse and Ansanm. We'll ask for permission, because there's not a world in which permission will be granted to the children of the working class, right? To have opinions about what the community should be instead of people telling us what it should be, right? To show up in spaces where people are used to being the gatekeeper, the controller of information and access to the community, that it has to be shared now, right? And so depending on where you come from Haiti, how much French you speak, how you grew up, or people's interpretation of that, they assess whether or not to give you value. The work, my purpose forces you to have to engage, even if you don't want to. And I think that it's something that's uncomfortable for people. And I'm talking about Haitian community. You actually have to engage with Avanse and Ansanm. You have to see what we're about. Who are these people? where they from, right? These are all questions for people to really kind of assess what's your class. And it's dangerous because I think that we then create the same conditions that allowed for the huge disparities in class and people's ability to actually live that we see back home, right? Classism is very apparent. It's who gets invited to where. A friend of mine, I won't name her name, we often say, oh, when it's time to work, give good ideas, we get invited. But they get fact, you're capable de inviter nous. It's classism. It's like, who do we wanna be at tables with? I also don't have an appetite for stuff like that, right? If I'm going to show up on behalf of Miami Worker Centers at a gala, Avanse Ansanm, I'm coming with my people. The people who never get to experience this. For our 25th anniversary, Miami Worker Center went to Red Rooster in Overtown. There were Haitian people who are our members who we invited. The tickets were expensive. We made space for 50 members. We actually had a joint anniversary with one of our partner organizations. 50 of our members, 50 of their members, 100 out of 200 people, half went to our members. Working class people, domestic workers who had never been in a restaurant like this. One of our members after, he's like, Santra Denis, I've never seen anything like this. They deserve to, right? And this is the opportunity we have to allow for people to see themselves as worthy, right? But then you have others who, they work in the community, but they're never going to invite people, the dishwashers, to something like this. Haitian Lawyers Association had a gala. They honored me. So grateful. I brought our workers. I had a experience in Haiti about class that really helped to frame my understanding of who I am, how am I going to show up, particularly being a child of the working class, as it relates to class. So when I was in Haiti, I had someone say to me that if your parents did not travel by boat, you would not be able to engage, at the tables that you're able to engage at. And I think that it's not the first time that you'll hear people say that about people, and particularly for people, I would say, Haitian-Americans that are from South Florida, particularly, because there's a different, and I would even say there are northern folks who are northern from New York, Jersey, who also have sentiments, and sometimes you see it in the comments on social media about how they frame Miami. And I think people are joking, but there's an undertone of what people are trying to say. Those are dark-skinned people. They are lower-class people. Yopako Nabi. All of that is kind of like, surface level, but to the core, it's around being working-class people. I really didn't know I was working class. I mean, I grew up in a house. My mom and my father owned their home. I didn't live in apartments, but we were not wealthy. We were truly middle class, working class folks. But when I came back from the University of Florida and decided to start to make my way and make my rounds in the Haitian community, there were questions that people would ask me, but that I really was like, well, what are these questions about? Questions like, where your family from? What's your last names? All this. And I realized it was for people to really try to place me. So much so, folks know my personality. I'm fresh. And so I'm determined now when people ask me where I'm from Fort Lauderdale. Where your family from? Fort Lauderdale. Especially our people, because I don't want people to make judgments of folks based on their understanding of who their family are, where they come from. It's one thing if you're trying to say, oh, are we cousins or something like that? It's another thing for you to discredit people based on where they come from. And so I found it challenging, even as a Haitian American coming back home from Gainesville, to be taken seriously to be invited into Haitian community. It was very much, who's this girl? Who does she think she is? What languages does she speak? And even the comment from Haiti, it really was around me not speaking French and insisting I speak English. Because what folks are not going to do is either we're going to speak the language that both of us can communicate in, Creole, but if you want to one-up me by French, I can one-up you by English. Right? And so that's how I used to level people. Like, I know what you're trying to do. And so either we can speak Creole, we can all do our thing, and all of that is around, do you believe that a certain segment of society, working class people, have thoughts, have expertise, have dreams, deserve their piece of the pie? And even here in Miami, there are those of us who act like they don't. That working class people, folks who are your maids, people who are dishwashers, they have a lot of dreams. They know a lot. They are sharp. And they should be given the spaciousness, the opportunities to excel in the ways that we have. And class shows up in that we elect people who we think come from a certain class. We give value to people who come from a certain class. It's been even more interesting to see the new wave of Haitians who have left Haiti, how quickly they've been integrated, specifically from a certain class, in ways that even us who grew up here, because of our presumed class, have not been integrated. And I think we should be conscious of those dynamics. I had a friend who was like, oh, like, who are we, chopped liver? But I think it's been like, oh, we're going to go with the society, or we're going to recreate the society that we know, and that we like. And even now that's happening here in Miami. The last few years, we've gotten a lot of folks who've left Haiti to come to Miami, right? And now you see, in terms of leadership in organizations, hires in organizations, a real kind of, like, I would say, contentiousness, while not spoken, around how do you make decisions around who you're giving worth or even opportunities to, that is not mirroring the same dynamics that happen in Haiti. What is, America has its issues, but again, the opportunities I've been given, a child of a home health aide, to be an executive director, really stems from my background, how I grew up, not really being a factor. That's not so in our community, right? In our community, folks who have organizations, people have access to give people positions, they're still valuing that much more than people like me, who may have been here, may have been around, and are never given credits. I look at all the people who get contracts, how quickly they've been integrated in ways that the kids of working class people, are they also integrated or given opportunities in that same way? Why? Why not? How are we assessing that as a community? How are we thinking about equity in that way? These are all things for us to be very conscious of. If not, we duplicate the classist societies that have created what we see. I'm often, I think we have to find allies. There is a way in which I resonate with working class people. I'm also a master's level degree. I went to the University of Florida. There's a way I know how to navigate spaces in which people who don't have my background cannot. I'm actually able to play in both societies in a real way. That also furthers my ability to form alliances. Do I like it? That's another question. I mean, I don't. No one wants to grow up poor. You don't choose how you grow up. If you to grow up in an affluent family, you also didn't choose that either. we're not making judgments, but I think for me it's the values, right? Do you see working class people as people who should be at the table meaningfully, that they have things to contribute, that opportunities should be given to them, and that we should make space for them? Yeah, absolutely. Let's be allies. And we see that in our patterns. Sometimes this is again when I have to get over myself, but sometimes I'm so sad by how I'm like, where are our people? Where are the people who should be in space, who we really need them to understand? We really need them to be with us to move this community forward. They're nowhere to be found. They haven't been invited. They haven't been made space for them. But we need them, right? We don't win elections without them, right? We don't have political power. We don't have economic power without them, right? If you go to Haitian Flag Day Fest, the people who are bringing money to this Miami economy, so much so that I think they should do a report on Haitian Flag Day weekend in Miami about how much money in hotels and airlines and food is pushing this economy. And when you look around, it is the working class people who's celebrating the artist, right? Who's going to these businesses, right? And it's like, what do they want for their community? How can they be a part of the tables as well? Also, when we're celebrating, how can they have a seat there too? How can their kids see this? The game changer for us, and I would say in terms of class, is although I'm working class, there's always been people in my families who were examples. And so my uncle, my mom's brother, was a judge in Port-au-Prince. And my father's brother, who was the uncle who raised us, went to Florida State. And so there was never we never did not know that we had to go to college. Like we knew there was something next, and that we had people in our family who really paved the way, which for me is very different from a lot of our friends. Me and my sister say all the time, a lot of my friends went to college because we knew we were going to college, and they was like, oh, we going with them, right? And so like that ability to have that proximity, I think is a game changer. Working class people, class issues, people's proximity to each other, understand each other, see what's possible, see how communities are different. That's a game changer. But if you have people who don't believe in that, who fundamentally want to keep the structural ways in which society moves, where the 1% has it all and we have crumbs, I can't get down with that. A lot of us feel the weight of that. I can't carry my whole family. They got to have opportunities to thrive on their own. So that means the 1% has to share the wealth, share the opportunities. And so a better Haitian community, what does that mean for people? Does that mean for all of us or for just the same old folks? I lost a board member because we took a position on Palestine. My organization, my Yorker Center. Good riddance. If you don't understand that people are getting blown up, I don't know what else to tell you. And this is not the first time we've taken a stand. She didn't know I don't think she did her research. But I'm like, our organization was founded by communists. I'm actually more conservative than that. They are leftists all the way. And so I inherited this. I think as a Haitian-American, it is quite challenging holding multiple truths. I'm very concerned about, I think people think about it as a shallowness in terms of the representation of Haitians. I am very concerned about how the media depicts Black people and our pain and our trauma. And so I am hyper vigilant around people's dignity and humanity, even when it's violence. Because people will make it seem like we're not humans. We'll do it to ourselves. And so I, on one end, um, always want to think about, but there's good people. People are trying. Um, like, these are things that we tell ourselves to stay hopeful as a discipline. Um, I think the other thing is I'm struggling because Haiti pains me. Um, I used to go back to Haiti like maybe 2011, 2016 to about 2020, multiple times a year. And I do not lie. Maybe it's because of Digicel, the service is shoddy. Um, but I don't rest well, but I rest well in Haiti. And so it's really been like heartbreaking to see, to hear, to see, to experience, as much as we're not experiencing it firsthand, but to feel it. I'm a generation of folks who our parents or family never thought they would retire in America. They were all going home. And to have to deal with those dreams being dissipated, no real plans for aging. There's a lot that we're holding in terms of Haiti. I'm also most concerned about, you now have a generation that doesn't know a stable Haiti, and what that does to people, to not see value in each other, to not, like, I don't know what it feels like to be growing up in such volatility. And I think that I'm sad for what is supposed to be social norms. Kids are not killed. Mothers are not killed. Grandparents are off limits. I have friends of mine who've been in gangs and they're street codes. These people are off limits. And for that to not be a norm in Haiti is, I don't know how you relearn that there's certain things that's off limits, even in gangs. It feels, I don't know. You try to find humanity in people and everyone, and we're struggling to see and understand why people will do this to their own people. People who are experiencing the same issues that they are. In terms of diaspora engagement, the Haitian Times did a focus group with some Haitian Americans, and one of the things that they said, I was a part of the focus group, Ansanm was in collaboration with the Haitian Times, and so we did a focus group with the Haitian Times, and a lot of the rhetoric that was coming from the diaspora was really around they're inundated with bad news from Haiti, and they don't want it. Like, they can't sit with it. There's a side conversation we'll talk about another time around our ability to sit with pain and hurt and grief. We're a generation that struggle to sit with it. And they're like, are there any love stories coming out of Haiti? Can we get some Real Housewives, something? All we see is death, and they don't want it. And I feel like I have to turn it off to keep my sanity. It's a lot. And we are also not a people who, we share anything how it is. And I'm still very sensitive, and so I cannot see dead bodies. I do not want to see massacres, and we share it wide and we far. All of that is just like impacting us, and I'm worried about our emotional, mental stability, and being able to process, and how we treat each other after we've experienced so much harm and pain. In Florida, particularly, the port is regulated. It should be regulated. And so we did our rounds to talk to some of the congressional folks around more regulation at the ports, around what's moving from out of this region. We know that in terms of the waters, America has control over the waters in the Caribbean. And so if that much, at that amount of guns and ammunition is traveling, there's no way that we can't interrupt, figure it out. And so we met with some congressional people to ask them to to answer what's happening. And so we do think the diaspora has a role to play. I think it brings me back to the organized role. I think that there are elected officials who have the largest demographic of Haitians in their districts in this country, who are not pressuring the administration to do more to respond to the gun specifically. I think we cannot agree on whether or not there should be troops or not. Families have been torn apart about this issue, but on the issue of guns, I think we all agree that they need to get in front of it, and they need to stop, and they manufacture it. They know where these guns are coming from. And so our lack of gun violence or gun safety here is also impacting our neighbors. We know Mexico just said it as well. Haitians are saying it as well. So there's more that the diaspora can be doing to hold elected officials accountable, specifically in Florida, to really get on top of guns leaving this country that's showing up in other places. The story of Haiti right now in this political climate is, we have a president that's talking about taking away birthright citizenship. And so there's a lot of anxiety in Haitian Americans right now. You have, I don't know the numbers right now, how many folks who came to the Biden humanitarian program, who sold things, who set up their lives here, who might have to return. That's a lot of instability. And so I'm just concerned about our people and the long-term impacts of this amount of violence, this amount of even in-country transitions and external to the country migration as well. What it does to a people, what it does to our connection to one another, what it does to families, right? I think there will be studies a generation from now that will help us sit and dissect what this has done to an entire nation. And, the even longer process of what rebuilding looks like. I mean, again, I'm sensitive today, and I'm an organizer. And so we say and we mean it, that hope is a discipline. And so we believe that things have to turn around. We don't know how, but we believe, right? I mean, we're in America. We got to believe that things will turn around even for us. Our last thing I'll say is, Haitians are dispersed all over this world. And, everywhere we turn, we're not wanted. And so Haiti has to get better, right? It is imperative, right, for us to be home. The rapper Wendy has a song that I love. I've been having it on repeat. Haitian rapper Wendy. C'est pas là pour nous caille blanc. And it's not. I'll pause there.
Moi c'est Rikemi Pires, moi fais montage avec mon chaîne graphique pour AyiboPost. Vidéo ou so gade a mande nou en pile ressources pour le fait. Merci parce que vous avez regardé. Si vous avez un commentaire, mettez-le en bas vidéo. Abonnez pour ne pas rater aucun contenu. Like et puis partagez pour supporter nous.